This week on Ironmind.
What are you still carrying inside that's making you behave that way?
You don't feel fulfilled. So you're always like, where am I going to get happiness?
We offer opportunities around finding a way to get meaning back into your life.
I'm going to be watching you. I'm in your head, man.
My name is Brian Rose, and I host a show called London Real. A few months ago, John Joseph, the frontman of the hardcore punk band The Cro-Mags, walked into my studio. He's the complete opposite of me. But something happened. He challenged me to race the Ironman Triathlon in Chattanooga, Tennessee on May 20th, on a 100% plant-based diet. Previously, Ironman trainer Samantha Murphy pushed me to the limit, and I got to see some old demons. John Joseph showed me the spirit world, and I spoke openly about my heroin addiction for the first time. I returned to London and was told by Charles Poliquin that competing on my plant-based diet was impossible. We learned about John Joseph's dark past, and I pushed my body to the breaking point. I'm 47 years old and have never run an endurance race in my life. But they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This is my journey to the Ironman. My guest today is Dr. Gabor Mate, who specializes in neurology, psychology, and psychiatry, as well as the study and treatment of addiction. You spent 12 years in downtown Vancouver in clinics treating patients challenged by hardcore drug use, and you've used the plant medicine ayahuasca for addiction treatment. Dr. Mate, welcome to London Real.
Pleasure to be here.
You were really in the trenches in downtown Vancouver, and you saw what I think most people don't see. I think we see the Hollywood version of what addiction looks like, or we see what we'd like to think it is, but you saw what it really is.
I'll define addiction for you, okay? So addiction is manifested in any behavior that a person craves, finds temporary pleasure or relief in, but then experiences negative consequences in the long term and doesn't give up. I said any behavior. I didn't say drugs. Could be drugs. So I'm going to ask you now, by that definition, Brian, have you ever had an addictive behavior in your life?
Yes, many.
What did you like about it? What did it do for you?
It gave me temporary relief.
From?
From the pain I was feeling, usually related to interacting with my fellow humans.
Okay.
Or how I felt doing that.
Okay, so you had the emotional pain that was triggered for you by interaction with people.
And maybe even with being myself as well.
You weren't comfortable in your own skin?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. In other words, the addiction provided pain relief for you, temporarily.
Yes.
Keith Richards, who, as you know, had a ferocious heroin habit for a while, he says, the contortions we go through just not to be ourselves for a few hours. In other words, the addiction wasn't your problem. Your problem was that you had a lot of emotional pain, you didn't know what to do with. So really what it was is that the addiction came along to help you solve a problem you had no other solutions for at the time. And that's the case for all addictions. So why do people use? Why do people engage in addictions? Because they have deep emotional problems they don't have the means to resolve on their own. That's why they use.
Karen, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Tell us more about Addaction and what you do here in London.
The reality is nobody wakes up one morning and goes, I know I'm going to become a heroin addict. What happens is a series of things happen in people's lives that lead them down a road that they then can't get out of on their own because people have lost their family, they've lost their money. By the time people have got to that place, there's an awful lot of work and a lot of unpicking that needs to happen. What we would like to see happen is for people to feel able to talk about things at an earlier juncture so that it never gets that far down that road. And that's the problem with stigma, because people don't feel like they can ask for help.
You know, I was a banker back then, and I thought I wasn't the typical heroin addict, you know, because the movies show me that these people are on the streets and sleeping in sleeping bags, and honestly, I just didn't know where to go.
Services like ours are deliberately designed to cater for basically the whole population of people. Everybody can find that they have something that they thought was just a habit or something they were doing on the weekend, which can slowly spiral outside of their control. It's often related to stuff that's happened maybe when they were younger, or some traumatic things have happened to them. Our job is to try and make sure that people are aware of what to look out for, are aware of how to start a conversation with somebody if you are worried, and if you are worried, to know where to go to get help, which is what you didn't know.
What would you do with someone like me if I came to you back in the day?
So the first thing that we do is we get people in to sit down and chat to us, and we basically have a cup of tea. And from that, we then come up with a plan together that involves a mix of therapeutic intervention. So we might offer pharmacological support, so prescribing support, to help you get to a place where you're stable enough to start doing the psychological stuff, which is where actually all the work happens, as I'm sure you know from your own experiences. And then alongside all of that, we offer opportunities around finding a way to get meaning back into your life.
Wish I'd had you guys around 16 years. I was searching for meaning, and I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I'm running this Ironman in a few weeks, and I have a funny feeling I'm going to be surrounded by a lot of addictive personalities.
You might well be.
I'm wondering if you see that in your work, that people come in with a substance addiction and, you know, they move on away from that, but to other strangely addictive behaviors, and is that still a better result?
So sometimes people stop one compulsive behaviour and start up another compulsive behaviour. The overarching aim for us is to help people get to a place where they recognise that in themselves.
Karen, you're doing some amazing work here. I wanted to raise money for charity, and it was so obvious to choose Addaction because, you know, you're probably helping the Brian Rose now that I was, and so that guy was really messed up, so thank you.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Where does behavior come from, and what are you still carrying inside that's making you behave that way?
So let me go a little deeper on what I was thinking about when it came to my addictions. I think I was getting away from me, who I think was driving me to be the ultimate best. I know that this was a stupid behavior. It was a temporary fix that I usually paid for dearly the next day, and repeatedly paid for. And the more I did it, the more I think my self-esteem dropped a little bit, because I couldn't control this about myself. And so it wasn't until I started doing this show, and I had a first Ayahuasca ceremony, and I was crying so much that the tears were going down my eyes and dripping down off my ears, and I still remember the tears dripping off my ears. And I was going back, I was visualizing a 7-year-old boy, and this was me when my parents divorced. And this was this little boy that was building up all these walls around him because he had been hurt so much. And so for me, it was like no one's getting in the rest of my life. And maybe, was it my attempting to excel in the world was to show the world that they needed me, you know. So maybe that's why I went to MIT and got the job in banking, these kinds of things.
Well, it's an archetypical story.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're hurt as a child, and then you have to compensate for it. Because children interpret the world in those narcissistic ways, that whatever happens is because of me. So you failed to make your parents happy. And of course you're uncomfortable with yourself. That's a lot to deal with. Then you just develop this idea that I've got to do it all myself, I'm on my own. And this drives a lot of people, a lot of successful people in our society. That's what they're driven by.
At the very kind of nadir of my drinking and using, it was incredibly isolating, and I was tremendously ashamed. You know, my journey through recovery has been about owning that past and growing enough so that I can share it from a place of gratitude.
Do you think there's a little bit of a kinship between us ex-addicts?
I think, Ironman endurance sports have their pull for us ex-addicts. It's this, incredible template for self-exploration. They're sort of spiritual journeys, I think, in many ways. And, sort of trying to attempt to do something outside of your comfort zone, I think triggers something in our reptilian addict brains that we find very attractive.
Do you think I'm crazy for doing this, like with the plant-based diet and, the kind of the 3 months to go?
I thought it was awesome. I think for you to just jump with both feet all in, this complete unknown, I think it's super cool. It's like you learn in sobriety. It's like there's a surrender to it. Like you're surrendering to the elements, you're surrendering to what comes, your way. You have to be in acceptance of that. There's only so many things you can control.
How do you maintain balance in your life?
I hate that word balance because packed into that is this idea that we should feel guilty if everything in our life isn't like adequately apportioned every single day. I would say that I don't live a very balanced life on a day-to-day basis. Like I'm somebody who likes to go all in on something. That's when I do my best work. That's when I feel truly alive. And I refuse to feel guilty about that. But the important thing is that pendulum has to always swing back to center. So my focus is always on making sure that the most important things in my life are taken care of, which is my relationship with my wife and my kids. That comes first and foremost. My sobriety actually comes before that.
You mentioned sobriety there as being something that's really important, and I was really ashamed of the heroin days. Like I literally hadn't told anyone, even my wife.
I always say like shame can't survive the light. When you expose these things to the light and you're on the other side of them, they don't own you and they don't control you. For you to own it, publicly as you have, I think is very powerful. And I would imagine that that's done a lot of good in terms of reshaping your relationship with your past.
Thank you, man. It's literally made me a better person. This is what happens when you meet John Joseph. Crazy things happen to you. Now I'm doing this thing. And so what advice do you have for me on the day?
This is very much a mental game as much as it is physical. You put in the training. Now your performance is going to be dictated on how you kind of manage your mental well-being throughout the course of the day.
Yeah, my trainer, Samantha, I asked her, what time should I be going for? And she said, no, we're not going to talk about that.
Don't worry about that.
So,
who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the time is. Be gentle on yourself. You don't have to be perfect. And that's why I think it's important for you at this race to really just stay within your limits and have the bigger goal in mind the whole time, which is just crossing the finish line with a smile on your face. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing, man. It's an amazing service to humanity and super cool.
Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate it. Lots of love.
I'm going to be watching you. I'm in your head, man.
By the standards of a materialistic world, success looks a certain way. The more positive feedback you get, the more you get sucked into it. But as for your success, quote unquote, and mine success, quote unquote, there's a subtext. Do they really want me? Or is it what I'm doing for them that they want? So this is where the hunger comes from. You can never get enough. Because by doing, you're never satisfied when your hunger is about being and not having been accepted just for being.
Accepted for just being. I'd never thought of that before. I've spent all of my life doing the opposite, chasing success. And look at me now, competing in one of the toughest endurance races in the world. Is this part of my healing? Or will it make things worse?
It's not even about finishing, it's about giving your all at every moment, right? Like the race actually doesn't really truly matter. It's getting up every day and doing it whether you want to or not. The race is the fun part. The race is the part where everyone is watching. It doesn't matter when everyone is watching. It's what you do when no one is watching.
I'm stuck in this never-ending cycle of proving I am the best.
All of our athletes have mantras like You need to train with that mantra. Start to think about some words that are really, really meaningful for you.
Now, things are starting to make sense. Happiness is not a destination.
You don't feel fulfilled. So you're always like, where am I gonna get happiness? And that's what everybody's chasing. It's like a mirage that we're running in the desert and we think we see water. There's happiness. And we get there and poof.
Do I think about finishing the swim, or do I just think about keeping
Swimming.
a good, think about swimming?
Yeah.
Okay, just think about
Yeah.
swimming correctly and
Maybe not even correctly, just
swim.
How about you can swim? The beauty that you have a body and a life that allows you to do this. There's lots of people that don't get that opportunity. So the focus shouldn't be on the finish. The focus should be on the present and the process. You focus on the finish, you lose the entire journey.
It's about gratitude. It's about acceptance. My mantra was in front of me the whole time, but I just couldn't see it. It's ironic that I needed to challenge myself to finish a race in order to realize that it's about the journey. So easy to say, so difficult to apply.
The way the world is, and even the way you are, it's not your fault. It's not a fault. Just accept yourself. And you don't have to work so hard to be liked and loved. You're okay. Just relax, kid, you know, and allow life to come to you. You don't have to force it.
Next week on Ironmind.
Don't quit. People always ask me, what should I concentrate on? What's your advice for me going to Buds? I'm like, don't quit.
In 2001, I nearly died from a heroin overdose. That's why I'm dedicating my very first Ironman race to help those similarly addicted by raising money for Addaction, one of the UK's leading mental health, drug, and alcohol charities. Thank you.